Kaima had never taken a vacation before. Not really. There had always been something more important: work, family, responsibility. Rest felt like a luxury meant for other people. So when she finally stood in the open-air lobby of a hotel in Zanzibar, warm air brushing against her skin, it felt unreal, like she had borrowed someone else's life for a week. She was here on a group trip, the only way she could afford it. Her friends were arguing about dinner plans. Two coworkers laughed loudly near the check-in desk. Her cousin Didi stood beside her, one arm casually draped around her shoulders, leaning in to say something she barely heard. And then, she saw him. At first, she thought her mind was playing a cruel trick. He stood a few steps away, a travel bag at his feet, speaking to the receptionist. Taller than she remembered, broader somehow, but it was the way he tilted his head when he listened that stopped her breath. Zoba. The name came to her like a prayer she hadn't meant to say. Her chest tightened. The years between them collapsed into nothing. 6 months. That was all they'd had at university. 6 quiet, intense months filled with long walks, shared dreams, and the kind of love that feels too big for its container. Then he'd gotten the scholarship. The United States. His parents and siblings were already there, having won a visa lottery years earlier. He'd been above the age limits permitted via the visa lottery, and so couldn't go with them then. This was his chance to finally join them. She told him the relationship would have to end. He had tried to make her see it differently. "We don't have to decide everything now," he had said more than once. "We can try, just try." She remembered the way he leaned forward when he spoke, as if closing the distance between them might change her mind. "It never works," she had replied, steady even as her chest ached. "I don't want to stretch this into something painful." He talked about not giving up something good just because it was hard, tried to sway her. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't cry. She just kept shaking her head, and eventually he stopped trying. He nodded once, slow and resigned, and said, "Okay." She never forgot the way his voice sounded when he said it. Now, here he was, in Zanzibar, of all places. As if sensing her gaze, Zoba turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Recognition flickered across his face, surprise first, then something that looked like joy. His mouth parted slightly, like he might say her name, but before he could, "Kaima," Didi said softly, squeezing her shoulder. "You okay?" The gesture was harmless, familiar, protective. Zoba's expression shuddered instantly. His eyes dropped, to the arm around her shoulders, to the easy closeness, and then, slowly, he stepped back. That was when she noticed the ring, a simple band on his left hand. Her heart sank. Of course he had moved on. She told herself she had no right to feel the sharp twist of regret. She had made her choice, years ago. When he finally approached, his smile was polite, controlled. "Kaima," he said, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Zoba?" she replied, matching his tone, calm, careful. Introductions were made quickly. "This is..." Didi started. She cut in gently. "Didi, this is Zoba. Zoba, meet Didi." Just names, no explanation. Zoba nodded once, his eyes following her gaze to the ring on his own hand before returning to her face. "Well," he said, stepping aside as the receptionist handed him his key. "It's a small world." "Yes," Kaima said, "it is." Her group was already moving toward the exit, voices rising with excitement about Stone Town. The van was waiting. She hesitated for half a second, long enough to say something, anything. But she didn't. As she turned away, she felt his gaze follow her. She didn't look back. She had done this before, walked away before hope could grow roots, and she had survived it. The open-air eatery opposite the market buzzed with life. Tables packed close together, warm lights strung overhead, the air thick with spice and conversation. It was the kind of place where people leaned into one another without meaning to, where privacy was more suggestion than reality. Kaima had just reached for her glass when she felt it, that familiar pull. She looked up. Zoba stood near the entrance. He froze the moment he saw her. This time, he wasn't alone. An older man and woman stood beside him, composed, quietly observant. Two women flanked them. A man stood next to Zoba, hands in pockets, looking relaxed. Kaima recognized one of the women, his sister. They had met years ago when Chidinma came to visit from the U.S., warm, outspoken, impossible to forget. Her gaze shifted to the other woman. A ring glinted on her finger. Her chest tightened. Looked like a family vacation. The other man was probably Chidinma's husband, and the dark woman with questioning eyes looked like Zoba's wife. Before she could look away, the waiter waved the group forward. "This table," he said, pointing to the table right next to Kaima's. Chairs scraped. Greetings overlapped. The two groups settled in close enough that Kaima could hear fabric brush against skin, silverware being rearranged. Didi leaned in, cheerful and unbothered. "Kaima," he said lightly, nodding toward them. "See your friend?" Zoba looked up at the same time. Their eyes met. "Yes," Kaima said quickly. "We study together." Zoba opened his mouth, but Chidinma beat him to it. "Studied?" she repeated, smiling. "That's one way to put it." Kaima's stomach dropped. Chidinma turned fully toward her. "We met when I came to visit from the U.S. You were impossible to miss back then." A pause. Chidinma's smile widened just a fraction. "You and my brother were together, remember?" Both tables went quiet. Someone laughed awkwardly. Someone else leaned in. Didi straightened beside Kaima. "Together?" Zoba cleared his throat. "That was a long time ago," he said firmly. "In university." Zoba shot Chidinma a dark look. "These are my parents," Zoba said to Kaima. "Chidinma, you already know. And then this is Amara and Desmond." Zoba turned to his parents and said, "This is Kaima, a friend from the university." "In another lifetime," Chidinma added, still grinning. "Oh," his mother said gently, clearly interested now. "I didn't realize—" "Ignore Chidinma," Zoba insisted. "It's all in the past." Kaima felt heat creep up her neck. "Yes," she said, "it was." Silence stretched. Kaima noticed the speculative look in Amara's eyes and tried to give her a reassuring look. A look that she hoped said, "I'm not coming for your man." The conversation slowly restarted, but it had changed. Every laugh was forced. Every glance lingered too long. Kaima kept her answers careful. Zoba kept his tone distant. By the time Kaima stood, it felt like escape. "We should head back," she said. "Early morning." "Yes," Zoba said at once. "Same." They nodded. Civil, restrained, still pretending nothing had ever mattered. Kaima walked away with Didi. Behind her, Chidinma leaned toward her mother. "Well, well, well," she murmured. "This is going to be an interesting vacation." His family didn't wait until they got back to the hotel. They didn't even make it past the courtyard. Zoba's mother slowed first. His father followed, hands clasped behind his back. His sisters exchanged a look, the kind that said this conversation had already begun without him. "Zoba," his mother said gently, "walk with us." "I'm tired," he said. "It's been a long day." "You were tired that first year too," Chidinma replied, "and we still talked." He stopped. The night pressed in around them. Warm air, distant laughter from the market, life continuing as if nothing fragile had been brushed against. "I told you," he said evenly, "it was a long time ago." His father studied him. It didn't look like it. They walked a little farther until the noise softened and the hotel lights stretched long across the ground. "You remember how you were when you first came to the U.S., his mother said. Zoba looked away. He remembered. The apartment had felt too large, too quiet. He skipped meals, stayed out late walking nowhere, sat through conversations without hearing them. They thought it was culture shock, until one night, long after midnight, when his mother found him awake on the couch, staring at his phone. "She didn't want to try," he had said quietly. "She wouldn't even try." Back in the present, Chidinma spoke softly. I can't believe she's here. She's moved on, Zoba said quickly. Did you see Didi? Are you sure something is going on between them? Amara asked. He was standing and sitting too close to her, Zoba continued. Comfortable. They are probably together. Then, without being asked, he said, She thinks I've moved on too. His family looked at him. When we met in the hotel lobby, he said, I was wearing Amara's ring, on my finger. Amara stopped walking. She saw it, Zoba continued, and I didn't say anything. His mother closed her eyes. Why? She asked. Because she already looked like she belonged to someone else, he said quietly, and I didn't have the strength to undo what it took me years to survive. His father spoke at last. Besides, we did not raise you to interfere where another man may already be standing. But they are not married, Chidinma said. Chidinma, their father growled in warning. But it's true. Maybe she's not even happy with him. Stop, his mother said gently. They stood there in silence, the night humming around them. He couldn't believe he was standing only a few meters away from the woman he had lost. Didi didn't say anything right away. That alone should have warned her. They walked back toward the hotel together, the rest of the group a few steps ahead, voices drifting back in fragments. Kaima focused on the rhythm of her sandals against the stone, on keeping her expression calm, neutral, unremarkable. Didi slowed. She slowed with him. You didn't eat, he said at last. I did, she replied automatically. He glanced at her and said, You moved the food around. She sighed before replying, I wasn't hungry. Indeed, Didi said. She stopped walking. He stopped too, turning fully toward her now, hands in his pockets, head tilted in that way he'd had since they were children, the look that said he was assembling facts. Kaima braced herself. Didi said, I think you still like him, in a matter-of-fact way. She looked past him, toward the glow of the hotel entrance. You're imagining things. Didi smiled faintly. You always say that when you don't want me to finish a sentence. Kaima exhaled slowly. Didi, she said, keeping her voice even, it was a long time ago. That's what he said too, Didi replied. She flinched before she could stop herself. It doesn't matter, she said. It's done. Didi studied her face for a long moment. You know, he said slowly, every time you say that, it's about something that very much still matters. She almost laughed. Almost. Please don't do that, she said quietly. Do what? Fix it. He blinked. I haven't fixed anything. Yet, she said. That got a real smile out of him. You make it sound like a crime. It is, she said lightly. In some countries. He laughed, then sobered again. Kaima, he added casually. For what it's worth, though, he didn't look like a man who's done. Her heart stumbled. Kaima didn't come down for breakfast. She said she wanted to eat in her room, which Didi understood as a request for quiet more than food. He didn't argue. He just grabbed his phone and headed downstairs alone. The breakfast area was already busy. Zoba's family had gotten there early. His parents sat near the window, plates half finished, while his sisters moved back and forth between the buffet and the table. Zoba stood near the coffee station, staring into his cup like it had asked him a difficult question. Didi slowed when he saw them. Then Zoba looked up. Morning, he said. Morning, Didi replied easily, already reaching for a plate. They stood side by side for a moment, the clatter of dishes filling the space where conversation hadn't quite started yet. So, Zoba said casually, how are you finding Zanzibar? Didi smiled. Honestly, wouldn't have been my first choice. Zoba glanced at him. No? She had to convince me, Didi said, chuckling. I wanted something simple. She wanted different. Zoba stilled. She? He asked. Kaima, Didi said, still focused on the fruit he was picking up. She said if she was finally taking a real vacation, it had to feel nothing like Texas and preferably had a bit of home. She still gets Nija sick sometimes. Zoba looked up sharply. Texas? He said. The word came out slower than he meant it to. Didi paused, finally sensing the shift. Yeah, he said. That's where she lives. A beat passed, then another. I thought she was still in Nigeria, Zoba said quietly. Zoba set his cup down carefully. How long has she been in Texas? 2 years, Didi replied. Zoba nodded once. She doesn't talk much about before, Didi added, more cautious now. Not unless she has to. Zoba's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. She never did. The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Well, Didi said, lifting his plate, tone deliberately light. I should bring her something before she forgets to eat altogether. Zoba nodded. Of course. At the table, Zoba sat with his food untouched. Kaima hadn't stayed behind in Nigeria. She had simply gone on without him. And that realization hurt in a way he hadn't prepared for. Zoba didn't join his family at the table. He took his coffee and walked instead, letting the hotel grounds stretch out in front of him, palm shadows cutting long lines across the stone. The morning was already warm, already alive. Too alive for how still everything felt inside him. Texas. The word kept returning. He stopped near the edge of the courtyard and stared at nothing. He remembered the night he told her he was leaving, the way he'd rehearsed the conversation in his head, telling himself not to ask for more than she could give, telling himself to be practical, mature. He remembered saying, "We can try," and meaning it. He remembered the way she'd listened, calm, steady, like she'd already accepted something he was still fighting. It never works, she'd said. I don't want to stretch this into something painful. At the time, he had told himself it was the distance she was afraid of. She had crossed an ocean eventually, just not with him. He closed his eyes. She had said no without raising her voice, without hesitation, without bargaining. And now she was with someone else. Don't steal what isn't yours, his father's voice echoed in his mind. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Whatever they had once been, it didn't give him the right to disrupt her present. Especially not now. Especially not if she had chosen something else, someone else, with the same calm finality she had once chosen to let him go. But the questions refused to stay quiet. Had those 6 months meant as much to her as they had to him? Had she mourned it the way he had? Quietly, privately, for far longer than anyone knew? Or had she folded it away neatly, while he carried it like unfinished business? He exhaled slowly. The worst part wasn't the uncertainty. Kaima went to the beach early, hoping to beat the crowds. The morning air was cool, the sand still firm beneath her feet, the ocean stretched out in that calm, deceptive way that made it seem like nothing complicated had ever happened near water. She walked barefoot, holding her sandals in one hand, breathing in salt and quiet. She almost didn't see him. Zoba stood a little distance away, near the waterline, sleeves rolled up, shoes in his hand. He wasn't looking at the sea so much as letting it happen in front of him. She stopped. He turned. For a moment, neither of them moved. There was nowhere else to go. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied. They stood like that, close enough now that walking away would be noticeable. Awkward, unnecessary. So they didn't. The beach suits you, he said after a moment. She smiled faintly. I needed the air. He nodded. Me too. Silence settled, not uncomfortable, just full. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. I didn't know you moved to the U.S. The words landed gently, but they carried weight. Kaima didn't pretend surprise. She had known this question would come eventually. Yes, I did. Years after we broke up, she added. Oh, he said. She looked at him then, really looked. I didn't leave because of you, she added, if that's what you're thinking. He shook his head quickly. No, He stopped, choosing his words. I wondered when. She nodded once. Long after it was over between us. I wanted to reach you, he said finally. You didn't try, she replied. The words were softer than they sounded. He absorbed them without flinching. I thought you didn't want me to. She looked away toward the horizon. I didn't want long distance, she said. That was true. I wanted to try, he said. She felt the pull of that admission, familiar, dangerous. They were quiet again, the kind of quiet that invited honesty and temptation. I should go, she said suddenly. He frowned slightly. Already? Yes. She stepped back, instinctively creating space. He saw it, the withdrawal, and mistook it for something else. I won't make this difficult, he said. I know you're with someone else now. Her heart stuttered. She forced herself to meet his eyes. And I know you're married, she said. There it was. They both froze. The ocean rushed loudly between them. Zoba stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. He opened his mouth, closed it. The moment stretched, taut, fragile. Then he said carefully, You should get back. The sun's rising fast. She nodded, relief and disappointment colliding in her chest. Yes, she said. I should. She walked away without looking back. Zoba stayed where he was, staring at the place she had stood. They had said more than they ever had, and somehow nothing at all. Amara caught up to Kaima just as Zoba walked away. He hadn't looked back. Kaima watched him disappear down the path, her chest tight, her thoughts still tangled in everything they hadn't said. She turned slightly, ready to head back inside, and nearly collided with Amara. Oh! Kaima stopped short. Amara smiled and held up a light scarf. You left this the other day. Kaima recognized it immediately. Thank you. I didn't realize I dropped it. She took it, looping it absently around her fingers. They stood there, the space between them suddenly charged. Amara glanced in the direction Zoba had gone, then back at Kaima. I hope I'm not intruding, she said. I just wanted to give it back. Kaima nodded. Of course. A pause, the kind that suggested more. Kaima inhaled quietly. She didn't rush her words. I just want to be clear, she said calmly. There's nothing going on between me and Zoba. Amara blinked, surprised. We talked briefly, Kaima continued. That's all. I wouldn't go after a married man. Amara studied her for a moment, then smiled, not defensively, not possessively, but with something like relief. I know, she said. Kaima hesitated. You do? Yes, Amara said gently. Besides, I'm not his wife, Amara added. Kaima's breath caught. I'm his sister. The world didn't stop, but something in Kaima did. Oh, she said softly. Amara gestured lightly. The ring probably didn't help. The ring, Kaima repeated faintly. He was wearing mine when you first met in the lobby, Amara said. My hands got swollen during the flight, and I gave it to him to hold. He slipped it into his finger as a joke, and we all forgot about it. Kaima let out a slow breath, the kind that feels like it's been waiting for permission. I thought you were his wife, Kaima said, feeling foolish. Amara nodded. It was reasonable. They stood there for a moment, the truth settling between them, not explosive, but disorienting. And Didi, Amara added carefully. He's my cousin, Kaima said at once. Amara smiled. I thought so. Kaima closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. I thought he'd moved on, so I pretended Didi was, she said. I didn't want to interfere. Amara's expression softened. He thought the same of you. That landed harder than anything else. He didn't want to cause trouble between you and Didi. Kaima's fingers tightened slightly around the scarf. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. Thank you for telling me. Amara nodded. I didn't want to let a misunderstanding decide things for you. For us? Kaima asked quietly. Amara smiled, already stepping back. That part, she said, is no longer mine to comment on. I need to get back to my husband. She turned and walked away, leaving Kaima alone beneath the trees. Kaima's heart was pounding so hard. She was afraid. She wanted to try again. She wanted him to want it too. But what if he didn't trust her to hold on when things were rough? Fear had always been her warning system. Step back. Don't ask. Don't risk what you can't repair. But standing there now, Kaima realized she had to choose her path and not just let fear decide. And for the first time in years, she decided to act despite her fears. Zoba didn't go far. He walked the length of the path once, then again, before stopping near the low wall that overlooked the garden. The air was warm, the light already brightening into midday. He told himself he was only giving her space. He knew better. Zoba. He turned. Amara stood a few steps away, her expression calm, purposeful. "You left quickly," she said. "I didn't want to complicate things," he replied. She smiled faintly. "That ship sailed." He exhaled, the tension easing just a fraction. "I returned her scarf," Amara said. He nodded. "Thank you." "And we talked." "I assumed you would." She studied him for a moment. "You know she thought I was your wife." "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew the moment she pulled away." Amara's brows lifted slightly. "You always noticed that." "I had practice," he said. She accepted that, then continued. "She stepped back because she believed you had moved on," Amara said. "Not because she didn't feel anything." His jaw tightened. "That tracks." "There's something else," Amara said. He opened his eyes. "Didi," she said. "He's her cousin." Zoba's heart skipped several beats. "What?" he said. "Her cousin," Amara repeated. "Nothing more." He stared at her. All that careful withdrawal, built on something that had never been real. He let out a slow breath, then another. "So she wasn't," he stopped himself. "She isn't with anyone." "She isn't with Didi," Amara said gently. "Can't say for sure, but I don't think she's with anyone." Hope rose, sharp, dangerous, undeniable. "She knows the truth now," Amara continued, "and you know the truth." He looked at her, listening closely. "What both of you do with that information," she said evenly, "will determine what happens next." The weight of that settled squarely on his shoulders, not hers alone, theirs. He nodded slowly. She smiled, satisfied. "She may come looking for you," Amara said, "or she may not." He absorbed that without argument. "That part," Amara finished, already stepping back, "is no longer mine to manage." She turned and walked away. Zoba remained where he was, waiting, hoping. Every sound made him look up. Every movement caught his attention. Because now there was no misunderstanding left to hide behind, only choice. And whatever came next, they would both have to step into it. Kaima found him where she hoped she would, near the low wall overlooking the garden, where the path curved just enough to feel private without being hidden. He stood with his back to her, hands resting on the stone, staring out at nothing in particular. She didn't hesitate this time. "Zoba." He turned immediately. The relief on his face was unmistakable. "Kaima." They stood there for a moment, neither rushing forward, neither retreating. "I spoke to Amara," she said. He nodded. "So did I." Something eased between them, the last barrier of uncertainty falling away. Kaima took a breath. "I thought Amara was your wife." "And I thought Didi was your boyfriend," he said. For a second, they just stared at each other. Then Kaima laughed, a real laugh, surprised, light, almost disbelieving. "Oh," she said, shaking her head, "we really did make a mess of that." He laughed too, the sound warm and unguarded. "We did." They stood quietly, the symmetry settling in. Then, almost without thinking, Kaima reached for his hand, just her fingers brushing his. He stilled, then turned his palm upward, meeting her halfway. When their hands fully connected, something unmistakable passed between them, a quiet buzz, familiar and new all at once. Not rushed, not overwhelming, just right. She inhaled softly, surprised by how natural it felt. "I couldn't focus on anything after you left," she said, her voice quieter now. "I don't know how I kept up my grades." He tightened his fingers around hers, just slightly. "The first few months were terrible," he admitted. "I barely slept. My family thought it was the move." She looked at him. "It wasn't," he said. "It was you." Her chest warmed at the words. A smile spread across her face, unguarded now. "I don't think you know how happy that makes me," she said. "Knowing it mattered to you the way it mattered to me." He smiled back, eyes soft. "And then," he added, almost shaking his head, "finding out you'd been in the US all this time, that shocked me. I've been replaying everything since, wondering why you didn't try to reach me." She nodded. "I moved long after we broke up. I didn't reach out because I thought the chapter was closed." "I told myself the same thing," he said, "that reopening it would only hurt." They stood there, hands still joined, the garden quiet around them. "This doesn't erase what happened," Kaima said. "No," he agreed, "but it gives us a choice we didn't think we had." She met his eyes. "What do we do now?" "We can try to continue from where we stopped," he said. She smiled. They stayed like that for a moment longer, hands linked, the past finally settled where it belonged. 1 year later, Zanzibar felt familiar. It held memory. Kaima watched the sun dip toward the horizon, laughter rising around her as if it belonged there. Didi was in the middle of a story, animated as ever, retelling the events of the past year with generous exaggeration. "And then," he said, pointing between Kaima and Zoba, they both realized they had been foolish at the exact same time. Amara laughed, leaning into her husband. "It really was impressive," she said, "a masterclass in restraint." Zoba only smiled, shaking his head. "We prefer to call it character development." Kaima laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. It had been a year of learning, of talking, of choosing honesty even when it felt risky, of discovering that love didn't always return the way it left, but sometimes came back wiser. She caught Zoba watching her, that look, the one that still startled her, even now. "Come walk with me," he said quietly, standing and holding out his hand. She took it without hesitation. They walked toward the edge of the beach, toward the stretch of sand where everything had once unraveled, and then, impossibly, begun again. "You know," she said lightly, "this is where we almost said everything and said nothing." "I remember," he replied. "All that confusion just to protect our pride." She squeezed his hand. "You don't have to rehash our foolishness." He stopped, so suddenly that she nearly walked into him. "Kaima," he said, turning to face her. She frowned playfully. "Why do you sound serious?" He smiled, nervous, hopeful, familiar. "Because this place," he said, gesturing around them, "reminds me of what happens when you stop letting fear decide." Her breath caught. He reached into his pocket. Before she could process it, he was on one knee, right there, where the ocean whispered and the sky glowed gold. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh." "Kaima," he said, voice steady despite everything. "Will you marry me?" She nodded before the question fully settled. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying all at once. "Yes, of course, yes." Applause erupted behind them. She turned, stunned, to see her family emerging from the shadows. Her sister, her parents, cousins she hadn't seen in years. And behind them, his parents, his brothers, everyone. She laughed, overwhelmed, joy spilling out unchecked. "You planned this," she said, shaking her head. Zoba stood, slipping the ring onto her finger. I had help. Didi raised both hands. I take full credit. Amara smiled, eyes shining. We all do. Kaima looked around, at the people she loved, at the man who had once been lost to her, now standing firmly by her side. Her chest felt too full for words, too full for fear, too full for anything but gratitude. As the sun disappeared into the sea, Kaima leaned into Zoba, still smiling, still disbelieving. 1 year ago, she had come to Zanzibar hoping to rest. She had left with a second chance. And now, she was home. Have you ever let fear keep you from something you wanted? We hope this story motivates you to have difficult conversations. You never know what is at the other end. If you enjoyed this story, please browse the channel for more inspiring stories. Until next time, do like, subscribe, and share.